Hello, everyone, and welcome to Story Corner. I'm your host, Grace Holland. In today's episode, we're joined by our special guest, Dr. James Sinclair, who brings valuable insights and real-life experience on the topic of procrastination. We're excited to learn from their journey and perspectives. Hello, Mr. James Sinclair. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've heard you've been working extensively on why people procrastinate and how it affects mental well-being, which is absolutely fascinating.
Hello, and thank you so much. It was an exciting project for me as well, and receiving feedback from everyone has been wonderful.
That's brilliant to hear. I am very curious to know what you do in your free time, and I'm sure our audience will find that inspiring.
For me, it's very hard to find free time due to workload, but I often do painting, swimming, and sometimes traveling on weekend.
Right, shall we move on to some questions from our audience? They're quite keen to hear your thoughts. In simple terms, what is procrastination, and why do so many of us struggle with it?
Procrastination means putting off something you know you should do, even though you understand it may cause stress or problems later. Instead of starting the task, you delay it, often choosing something easier or more comfortable in the moment. In simple terms, it's choosing short-term comfort over long-term benefit.
You've raised an important issue here. Would you mind explaining this concept further and sharing more insight from your professional experience?
When people procrastinate, they are not usually being lazy. Most of the time, they are avoiding uncomfortable feelings, so the brain looks for relief by switching to something easier, like scrolling on a phone, watching videos, or chatting with friends. This gives temporary comfort, but the task remains unfinished in the background. Over time, procrastination creates a cycle. First, a person delays a task. Then, as the deadline gets closer, stress and guilt increase. This pressure can make the task feel even harder, which leads to more delay. Eventually, the person rushes to finish at the last moment or misses the opportunity completely. This can affect work quality, confidence, and mental health. Procrastination can also damage long-term goals. When important tasks such as studying, exercising, or working on a career plan are postponed repeatedly, progress becomes slow. Small delays may seem harmless, but when they happen every day, they turn into lost weeks and months. In reality, procrastination is not a time management problem, it is an emotion management problem. People procrastinate because they want to escape discomfort in the present moment. Learning to take small steps, breaking tasks into simple parts, and focusing on progress instead of perfection can help reduce procrastination. Procrastination is not just about delaying work. It is about choosing comfort now and paying the price later with stress, regret, and missed opportunities. The key to overcoming it is understanding why we avoid tasks and training ourselves to act even when we don't feel motivated.
How does procrastination actually show up in our daily lives, or what does it really look like?
Procrastination doesn't always look like doing nothing. It often looks like scrolling on your phone instead of starting work, telling yourself, "I'll do it later," again and again, staying busy with small, unimportant tasks to avoid a big one, waiting for the perfect mood or right time to start. From the outside, it can look like laziness, but inside, it's usually avoidance.
That's very insightful. Could you please explain this further so our audience can better understand your perspective?
Procrastination doesn't always look like doing nothing. It often looks like staying busy with things that feel productive but do not really move you forward. A person may spend hours scrolling on their phone instead of starting important work, convincing themselves that they just need a short break before they begin. They may keep telling themselves, "I'll do it later," over and over again, even though deep down they know that later keeps getting pushed further away. Another common sign of procrastination is focusing on small, unimportant tasks to avoid a bigger and more challenging one. For example, someone might clean their desk, organize files, or reply to messages instead of working on an assignment or project that feels difficult. These activities give a false sense of productivity while the real task remains untouched. Many people also wait for the perfect mood or the right time to start. They believe they need to feel motivated, inspired, or fully prepared before taking action. In reality, this perfect moment rarely comes. Motivation usually appears after starting, not before. Waiting for the ideal feeling only increases delay and anxiety. From the outside, this behavior can look like laziness or a lack of discipline. But on the inside, it is often driven by avoidance. People avoid tasks because they feel fear of failure, pressure to be perfect, or uncertainty about how to begin. They are not refusing to work, they are struggling with uncomfortable emotions connected to the task. So procrastination is not simply wasting time. It is a pattern of choosing safe and easy activities to escape challenging responsibilities. Understanding this helps us see that the solution is not just to work harder, but to learn how to face discomfort and take small, meaningful steps forward even when we don't feel ready.
What are the main reasons people procrastinate, even when they know it's harming them?
Procrastination is mostly caused by emotions, not poor time management. Common reasons include fear of failure, perfectionism, overwhelm, low motivation energy, lack of clarity. At its core, procrastination is the brain's way of avoiding discomfort.
I appreciate your response. Could you take a moment to explain this in more detail and clarify how it affects people in their daily lives?
Procrastination is mostly caused by emotions, not poor time management. Common reasons include fear of failure, perfectionism, feeling overwhelmed, low motivation or energy, and a lack of clarity about what needs to be done. These emotional barriers make tasks feel heavier than they actually are, which leads the mind to delay action. Fear of failure is one of the strongest causes. When people worry about making mistakes or being judged, they avoid starting the task at all. It feels safer to delay than to risk doing something wrong. Perfectionism works in a similar way. A person may want everything to be done perfectly, so they keep postponing the task until they feel ready, which often never happens. Feeling overwhelmed is another major factor. When a task seems too big or too complex, the brain does not know where to begin. This confusion creates stress, and the easiest escape from that stress is to avoid the task completely. Low motivation or energy can also make simple tasks feel exhausting. When someone is tired or emotionally drained, even small responsibilities can feel impossible to start. Lack of clarity plays an important role as well. If a person does not clearly understand what steps to take, the task feels uncertain and uncomfortable. The brain prefers clear and simple actions, so it chooses familiar and easy activities instead of facing confusion. At its core, procrastination is the brain's way of avoiding discomfort. It is a protection mechanism, not a sign of weakness or laziness. The mind looks for immediate relief from stress, fear, or pressure, even if that relief creates bigger problems later. Recognizing these emotional causes is the first step toward change, because when we understand why we delay, we can learn to manage our emotions and take action in small, confident steps.
What actually happens in the brain when we procrastinate, and why does it feel so hard to stop?
When you procrastinate, your brain is stuck in a tug-of-war between two systems. The emotional brain wants comfort and quick relief, while the thinking brain wants long-term success. Procrastination happens when emotions like stress, fear, or boredom overpower logic. Each time you delay a task, your brain gets a small hit of relief, almost like a reward. Over time, this trains your brain to associate avoidance with feeling better, making procrastination a habit. Chronic procrastination can also increase anxiety, reduce focus, and weaken decision-making skills.
For the benefit of our audience, could you please elaborate on this point and share any practical perspective from your field?
When you procrastinate, your brain is caught in a constant tug-of-war between two powerful systems. The emotional part of the brain seeks comfort, safety, and quick relief from stress, while the thinking part of the brain focuses on long-term goals, responsibility, and success. Procrastination happens when emotions such as fear, stress, boredom, or frustration become stronger than logic and self-control. In that moment, your brain chooses what feels good now instead of what will be good later. Avoiding a task removes pressure for a short time, and this creates a sense of relief. That relief feels almost like a reward. You may think, "I'll start later," and instantly feel calmer. This temporary comfort tricks the brain into believing that avoidance is helpful. Over time, this pattern becomes a habit. Each time you delay a task and feel relief, your brain learns to connect procrastination with feeling better. This is how procrastination turns into an automatic response instead of a conscious choice. The brain begins to seek escape whenever it senses discomfort, even when the task is important. Chronic procrastination can have serious effects on mental performance and emotional health. It can increase anxiety because unfinished tasks stay in the back of your mind. It can reduce focus because your attention is split between what you should be doing and what you are avoiding. It can also weaken decision-making skills, making it harder to start tasks or stick with plans. In the long run, this struggle between emotion and logic can damage confidence and self-discipline. The more often a person gives into avoidance, the harder it becomes to trust themselves to take action. Understanding this brain battle is important because it shows that procrastination is not just about being lazy, it is about learning to manage emotions and train the brain to choose progress over comfort, even when discomfort is present.
Does procrastination mean someone might have ADHD, or is that a myth?
Procrastination is common in people with ADHD, but it does not automatically mean someone has ADHD. ADHD affects executive functions like planning, focus, and impulse control, skills that are essential for starting and completing tasks. People with ADHD often procrastinate because their brains struggle with motivation regulation, not because they don't care. However, many people without ADHD procrastinate too, usually due to stress, fear, or habits. Procrastination alone is not a diagnosis, but persistent struggles with focus, time blindness, and organization may be worth discussing with a professional.
You mentioned something very important just now. Could you further explain this so that our listeners can gain a clearer and broader understanding?
People with ADHD often procrastinate not because they are careless or irresponsible, but because their brains struggle with motivation regulation. Tasks that feel boring, repetitive, or not immediately rewarding are especially hard for them to begin. Even when they truly want to finish something, their brain may not produce enough motivation to start, which leads to delays and frustration. This is different from ordinary procrastination. Many people without ADHD procrastinate because they feel fear of failure, pressure to be perfect, or emotional stress. Their delay is usually linked to avoidance habits rather than brain-based difficulties with attention and impulse control. In contrast, individuals with ADHD may experience procrastination alongside other challenges such as difficulty staying focused, losing track of time, often called time blindness, and struggling to organize daily responsibilities. It is important to understand that procrastination alone is not a diagnosis. Everyone procrastinates sometimes. However, when procrastination is constant and is combined with long-term problems in focus, memory, organization, and time management, it may be a sign of something deeper. If someone finds that these struggles are affecting their work, studies, or relationships on a regular basis, it may be helpful to talk to a qualified professional. A proper evaluation can determine whether the issue is related to ADHD or to emotional and lifestyle factors. Recognizing the difference helps people choose the right strategies and support, rather than blaming themselves for something they may not fully control.
Is procrastination actually a mental disorder, or just a bad habit we've normalized?
Procrastination itself is not classified as a mental disorder in medical manuals like the DSM-5. However, chronic procrastination is often linked to mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, ADHD, and perfectionism-related stress. In many cases, procrastination is a coping mechanism, not a disorder. It becomes a serious problem only when it consistently interferes with work, relationships, or mental well-being.
Could you kindly break this down a little more and help our listeners grasp the full meaning of what you're describing?
Procrastination itself is not classified as a mental disorder in medical manuals such as the DSM-5. It is considered a behavior, not a diagnosis. That said, chronic procrastination is often connected to underlying mental health conditions, including anxiety, depression, ADHD, and stress caused by perfectionism. These conditions can make it harder to start or complete tasks, which may look like procrastination on the surface. In many cases, procrastination functions as a coping mechanism. People use it to temporarily escape stress, fear, or uncomfortable emotions, even though this relief is short-lived. It is the brain's way of avoiding discomfort rather than a reflection of laziness or lack of ability. Procrastination becomes a serious problem only when it starts consistently interfering with important areas of life, such as work, studies, personal goals, or relationships. When delays lead to missed deadlines, poor performance, or rising stress levels, it can significantly affect mental well-being. Understanding this distinction is key. Procrastination alone is not a mental disorder, but persistent patterns of avoidance can be a signal that emotional or cognitive support is needed. By addressing the underlying causes, whether emotional, motivational, or structural, people can break the habit and regain control over their time, productivity, and mental health.
Can procrastination be a trauma response and not just a lack of discipline?
Yes, in some cases, procrastination can be linked to trauma. For people who have experienced chronic stress, criticism, or emotional neglect, tasks can subconsciously trigger feelings of fear, shame, or failure. The brain responds by avoiding the task as a form of self-protection. This isn't laziness, it's the nervous system trying to stay safe. This type of procrastination is often tied to freeze responses, low self-trust, and emotional overwhelm.
Could you please walk us through in more depth so we can clearly understand how it works?
Yes, in some cases, procrastination can be closely linked to past trauma. For people who have experienced chronic stress, harsh criticism, emotional neglect, or other difficult experiences, even simple tasks can subconsciously trigger feelings of fear, shame, or anticipated failure. The brain perceives these tasks as potentially threatening, and the natural response is to avoid them as a form of self-protection. This kind of procrastination is not a sign of laziness or lack of discipline. Instead, it reflects the nervous system's attempt to keep the person safe. When a task activates memories or emotions connected to past hurt, the body may react with a freeze response, making it hard to start or continue the work. People experiencing trauma-related procrastination often struggle with low self-trust, doubt their abilities, and feel emotionally overwhelmed when facing responsibilities. Even when they genuinely want to act, the emotional load can feel too heavy to handle. Understanding this perspective changes how procrastination is approached. Rather than simply trying to push through with willpower, addressing the emotional roots, through self-compassion, supportive strategies, and sometimes professional help, can make it easier to break this cycle and take meaningful steps forward.
Are we born procrastinators, or is it something we learn over time?
Research suggests procrastination has a genetic component, especially traits like impulsivity and emotional regulation. Studies on twins show that procrastination is partly inherited and closely linked to self-control. That said, genetics don't decide your destiny. Environment, habits, upbringing, and coping skills play a huge role. Procrastination is influenced by genetics, but shaped by behavior.
Please take a moment to explain this further so our listeners can better understand.
Research suggests that procrastination may have a genetic component, particularly in traits such as impulsivity, emotional regulation, and self-control. Studies on twins have shown that some tendencies to delay tasks are inherited, indicating that the brain's wiring can make certain people more prone to procrastination than others. These genetic influences can make it naturally harder for some individuals to resist short-term rewards or manage uncomfortable emotions, both of which contribute to putting off tasks. However, genetics do not determine your destiny. While some people may have a natural predisposition toward procrastination, environment, habits, upbringing, and learned coping skills play an equally, if not more, important role. Supportive routines, goal-setting strategies, and emotional management techniques can help counteract genetic tendencies. In other words, procrastination is influenced by biology, but it is ultimately shaped by behavior. Understanding the genetic component can help explain why procrastination feels automatic at times, but it also highlights that with intentional strategies and consistent practice, anyone can train their brain to act more effectively and reduce avoidance patterns.
How does procrastination quietly affect our work, business, and behavior, especially in the age of social media?
Procrastination slowly damages your productivity, confidence, and long-term success. In work and business, it leads to delayed actions, missed opportunities, and inconsistent results. On social media, it shows up as endless scrolling instead of creating or executing. The brain chooses instant dopamine from content over focused effort. Psychologically, every delay weakens self-trust and increases stress, making avoidance a habit. Procrastination doesn't destroy success instantly. It does it through small daily delays. Over time, these repeated delays add up, creating a gap between where you are and where you want to be. Each postponed task slowly chips away at productivity, making it harder to maintain momentum and complete long-term goals. The impact is not only practical but psychological. Every time a task is avoided, self-trust erodes slightly. You may start doubting your ability to follow through, which increases stress and anxiety. This creates a vicious cycle. Stress from unfinished tasks makes you want to avoid them even more, reinforcing procrastination as a habit. In professional settings, chronic procrastination can result in missed deadlines, inconsistent performance, and lost opportunities. In business, it may mean delayed product launches, slow responses to clients, or stagnation in growth. On social media or creative projects, the effects are just as real. Time that could be spent creating, strategizing, or learning is instead consumed by passive scrolling, giving the brain quick dopamine hits but no meaningful progress. Over months and years, these small delays compound, quietly undermining confidence, reputation, and potential. Breaking this cycle requires awareness, intentional action, and strategies that address both the emotional discomfort and practical barriers behind procrastination. By taking consistent, small steps and prioritizing tasks even when it feels uncomfortable, it becomes possible to reclaim control, rebuild self-trust, and steadily move toward long-term success.